Namaste, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. We are at the cusp of the end of one year and also the beginning of a new one. Does this bring better tidings for Bharat? The story of Bharat itself. 2024 has seen a lot of ups and downs. 2025, what should we look forward to? And there are different perspectives. Joining us here on this very special broadcast as we wish you New Year's greetings and hope and pray that the calendar year of 2025 brings all of us far much more peace, happiness, good health, and of course prosperity. Gautam Chikarmani with us, Ishkaran Bhandari, Shubhrashta, and Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Namaste, aap sabko Navavarsh ki shubhkamnaएं. The Gregorian calendar, as you were to say, because the Samvat has a different new year, but that is one part. But to the lady and the gentleman, your thoughts on the hits and misses of 2024, and this is the perspective is Bharat. We will look at it from the Bharat prism. So any field, any sector where you would want to perhaps punch holes and say, oh, we didn't do this well, or you would like to say, oh yeah, we'd like to do this. We've done this well and we should just go forward. And towards the back end of this conversation, we would look ahead into 2025. I would like to keep it free flowing. Please chip in and say how you'd feel. So it's like a conversation over coffee, although I have not got mine, but his. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, let's start from the far end.
The first was the general election. It was a defeat, the third consecutive defeat for the India Alliance, but it felt like a victory for them. And it was the third successive win of the NDA, which felt like a defeat for them. So that was, for me, highlight number one. Highlight number two was, well, foreign policy in that sense, with Canada specifically, where, India isn't the weakling we were in the 1980s to just roll over and die. And Canada isn't the big shot that it was in the 1980s, that whatever they say becomes gospel truth. You push back very hard. And I think if you want to see the real power differential that's developed from the 1980s to 2020s, it's the situation with Canada, where none of its friends were even willing to back it up anymore. Where, they came out against the murder of Litvinenko and people like that in the UK, but they're not willing to come out against India, though I deny we had anything to do with this this thing. I'm not going to mention terrorist names out of my mouth, so they're not worth it. The third was, this persistent, and there's a big fail, this persistent love we have of bureaucracy, without realizing they are rapine, vicious, unaccountable, faceless people who get a very sadistic power thrill from making your life miserable. You see, you either make the regulations easy and the bureaucrats to compensate for the bureaucrats. You don't put faceless bureaucrats in charge of excessive regulations where, like one barfi wala said, मैं क्या बर्फी बेचूंगा या देखूंगा कोई उसमें chocolate है या चांदी का वर्क है, right? So I think hits, misses, mixes all over, but all up, an unremarkable year.
For you, you believe it's an unremarkable year. Yeah. From my perspective, for me, the highlight was at the top of the year with the Pran Pratishtha and also the opening of the Ram Mandir. That was a big moment. 22nd of Jan will always be etched in my memory. And interestingly, Gautam Chikarmani, 5th of August 2019, 5th of August 2020 and 22nd of January 2024. Landmark moments in our country. And I was present there. So for me, as a journalist, as a career highlight, it's I will never forget these landmark moments. For you?
I think at a global level, to take elections forward, I see a rightward or a conservative shift across the world, be it European Union or United States, the continuum in India, which are the three largest elections that happened in 2024. And I don't think it's as much of a right towards right as it is against what is known as left. And I think the left needs to rethink what it has been doing, how it has been going on this, while the right now, since the ball is in their court and the governance is in their hands, needs to finally deliver what they said wasn't being delivered, which is basically law and order, economic growth, low prices. So the second thing I think is a little more future looking, although the election happened in recently, which is the return of Trump. I think Trump is going to be the biggest disruptor over the next 6 months. And there are things about what he will do with China, what are the trade problems with India. He's called India a trade abuser, etc., which I don't think are very much. I think India will manage the trade part very well. India is willing to negotiate, and I've seen the numbers. Other than cars, India is doing quite well. I think the biggest threat that Trump brings, in a positive sort of a way, is the reforms that he's doing in regulation with Elon Musk. I think they're going to deregulate a lot of things. They are going to make doing business in America much, much easier than it is. Given that, if the world's greatest market, largest market, becomes easy to do business in, why would any investment flow into countries like India or Europe or China if doing business in the world's greatest market is made easier? So I think there is a threat looming in 2025 on the regulatory side. Although India began this journey earlier with the Jan Vishwas Act, which was just nomenclature. They just decriminalized 113 provisions. But Jan Vishwas 2 is happening, and unless they accelerate and India ups its game, I think we are going to see, apart from high inflation which has been happening, or a falling GDP growth over the last 6 quarters from more than 8 to around 5.6 today, we are going to see an exodus of good quality capital back to the United States over the next 12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 months, and that doesn't harbor well for us who as a nation need to grow in double digits, 10 to 12%. If we have to get to that target that we have set for ourselves in 2047, or even to try and keep a pace with the likes of China. So I'll come back, we'll circle back on this. Opening comments, Shubhrashta.
Anand, for me, since I know elections professionally, I think the biggest highlight of the year was, of course, the Lok Sabha elections. And post that also, it was interesting to see how the BJP not only bounced back, but bounced back with such majority in most of the states. However, the miss that I see is the way in which the party should have organizationally and ideologically given a rethink. Because Ayodhya, as you said, has been a momentous, that journey has been a momentous journey. But what next? BJP has fulfilled almost all of its, the core ideological agenda, so as to say. So what is next in offing? So I think that has been a miss in terms of conversation. On the foreign policy front, I completely agree. The posturing that India has had has been is far more India as a more aggressive and a more assertive force to reckon with. But our relationship with the neighbors needs to be closely looked into, because if we are not able to get this in order, then most of the conversations on economy and finance would not really augur well for us. So that again, I see it as a slight miss. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to is how the government will respond to this whole era of artificial intelligence, which is about to dawn on us. Do we have policies in place? Do we have conversations in place? And I completely agree with Abhijit when he says that there has been no work done on bureaucracy. We really need a rethink, because this organization is going to go absolutely effete. This system is going to go absolutely effete if we do not start thinking about challenges and opportunities in artificial intelligence.
Fix the bureaucracy. Now, this has been a bee in the bonnet for how many decades? Even before the independence and post-independence, this is a carry forward of the colonial legacy. But Ishkaran Bhandari, we'll talk about all of these in detail. Yeah.
See, this was the election year. So, of course, it has to start with the election, and it was a vote for continuity. I remember in 2000, you would remember 2014, if Prime Minister Modi had gotten 240 seats, which BJP had never achieved, it would have been a humongous victory. This is his third election, he got it, and in a global scenario where most incumbents, I think out of 60-50 were voted out. And one beauty of our elections we don't realize, US, the strongest so-called nation in the world, their counting goes for 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the votes have been cast, and there are enough apprehensions of election fraud. California, I think, the tech capital of this world, right? It counted votes till 3 weeks after election before it could certify the state result. other states for 10 days. So we do not appreciate how smoothly our election functions. Odd voices of losers out. In fact, this time I don't think so. In Lok Sabha, the losers were speaking. It's only after Maharashtra election that EVM chants came out. But till Lok Sabha, there was no problem. And that ability to have a mass election at this scale with this professionalism, I think is becoming a unique feature to India, not even available to United States of America. So that's a big win. The second big win is the continuity. We have gone through eras of destabilized governments where one government will come and go ahead and push that project because certain private people might benefit in that project. Next government comes, completely cancels the project. What we saw happening in Andhra Pradesh on the capital issue, something as basic as that. Government changes, everything changes, and sometimes continuity is good for its own self. The second big issue I feel which has happened, which is very good, there has been a civilizational renaissance which was very important, starting from what you said, Ram Mandir, Pran Pratishtha, but also certain issues which were not being touched, like Waqf Board, the impact it has. Article 370 has been done. We read in childhood about unity and diversity. But that diversity is becoming differences, differences was becoming divisions, and inherent rights and divisions lead to partition. So that seems to be stemmed. There is a debate on Uniform Civil Code, some states are doing it. There is definitely some movement on Waqf Act, and that differences which are becoming inherent as a vote bank, not good for any nation, and I think there is a serious thing going on. And I would have said in a stronger language if Waqf Act had been passed. It's not been passed, so I am not saying that, but I think it will be passed. The challenge, of course, there are many challenges, including how illegal immigration is increasing in India, what is happening in certain areas, demographic changes being brought in, and how we fight that. Maybe we get lucky, as he was saying that Trump does certain actions on illegal immigration, which is very different from the earlier party, and that may have a global impact on how easily you can tackle illegal immigration. But I am not very optimistic on that, seeing India's past record, and that I believe is a huge challenge, because as we grow stronger and stronger economically, the area around us which is not so strong, there will be a greater illegal immigration, and what we gain in steps, we may lose a lot of that because of this.
But do you think we actually think collectively as a country? Has that happened? Do you see 10 years of, say, a nationalist quote unquote government, or a government that has put Bharat first under PM Modi? Do we as people tend to put Bharat first? Do we have that concept? Or do we believe, or do you feel that that's where the problem is? Because all of our policy doesn't flow with a one nation thought process.
True. See, this is the thing about Hindus and Jews, where completely, if there are 10 Hindus and 10 Jews in a room, you will have 50 different opinions, right? This is, and you know, it kind of required the Holocaust to give the Jews a collective consciousness. God forbid anything like that happens to us. But the thing here is, what is Hindutva if it isn't the generation of a collective consciousness? You know, we went on losing since the 7th century. Why? Because of our own internal divisions. We were, you know, the British, even at their peak, were only 100,000 white men living in India. And it was mostly the Indians fighting other Indians for the British. You know, even the Spanish conquest of South and Central America, there were only about a few hundred Spaniards. It was mostly Indian on, well, Native American fights happening out there. Hindutva is the first time we have realized what the problem is, and this is the coming together. And see, for me, the Pran Pratishtha was the starting of the process. Remember, Ayodhya to bas jhaki hai, Kashi Mathura baki hai. The Kashi and Mathura is where I think that entire process will take us towards. It is a work in progress. Has it happened yet? No. But it needs to happen. And this is where, you know, I will slightly disagree with Gautam. With Trump, the problem is that the Democrats are licking their wounds, but they are not out. They are vicious, nasty people who are capable of pulling off. Unless he's willing to, as he says, sack 50% of the FBI, sack 50% of the CIA. Will that pass the constitutional loops and barriers required? Right? Because remember, DOJ is an advisory body only. It has no power of law to legislate. It still has to go to Congress. And remember, Congress is one of the most, Congress and the Senate are some of the most compromised. Either corruption bolte hain, udhar lobbying bolte hain, and if you call it lobbying. And you know, they have very elaborate rules. You can take a senator out only for finger foods. You can't take them out for a whole meal, but that finger food can be worth $1,000, you know, if
Yeah,
you've
can
got
be
caviar or
yeah.
foie gras and things like that on top, right? So there's all kinds of way of circumventing all of this. In Canada, it's mostly cash. One of the reasons you've seen, you know, the Khalistanis exert so much political power is the fact that they deal in a cash economy.
Yeah.
They've got trucks, which are the drug transport. They're the local franchisees of the Central American drug cartels and things like that. And the problem is, you know, Trudeau used to use the Khalistanis, but the Khalistanis use Pierre Poilievre. You look at the four people surrounding him: Parm Gill, Jasraj Hallan, Tim Uppal, who's very popular here, and a Hindu called Arpan Khanna. These guys are out. Arpan Khanna's wife is office holder in the WSO. So you see, he's surrounded himself with Khalistanis. I don't think Canada's going away anywhere. It's a Canada problem. It's not a Trudeau problem. And America, we might actually find Trump may get 3 to 6 months. I suspect this is going to be like the 2014 election. Remember the number of reforms Modi introduced when he came to power. And all of them fell flat because of that one suit boot ki sarkar comment, and then the government sort of went into this sort of, oh, ye kya ho gaya, anti-poor, whatever. I think. I hope Gotham is right. I think I'll be right.
But please.
One point. Why I am pessimistic on the illegal immigration issue, because you said after Holocaust, Jews got a collective conscience. Hindus have had enough examples, including partition, to develop a collective conscience, know that special laws should not operate. You had 370 going on, would have still gone on, which the basic premise was a separate land in which separate laws will operate based on demography, nothing else, shorn of everything else, right? So after partition, if you have still not gotten collective conscience after losing your landmass, or in Bangladesh, when we had a terrific victory, you did not create an enclave, or, you know, there were many options at that time you could have done when you had 90,000 of their armed forces under your control, and all of them were from the most elite families, because that's how army was at that time. So you do not put pressure on that. So that is why on certain issues there has been a bit of renaissance, but is it enough? I, as of now, do not think, and that would be a big challenge going ahead.
Please.
I have a slightly different perspective. I think we do have a collective conscience, which is why India has survived till now and will continue to survive. Now, if one were to discuss the specifics, migration, illegal or illegal, it's going to continue, especially in the border areas of India, especially in the northeast. You cannot do away with that kind of migration because it doesn't come with borders. It's a borderless situation. You have a host of villages coming up because the Brahmaputra changes its course, things like that. Now, which is why I talked about ideological rethink. Is it possible that the sleuth of Bangladeshis that we are getting, in just an ideal world, quite an alternate perspectives, what if we convert them to Hindus and then you accept them as a part of your population? And I'm saying, I'm not making this comment very lightly, because if Abhijit were to talk about collective consciousness, if we believe that this entire landmass is ours, spiritually, ideologically and all of that, then what is stopping us from taking that position? It's not like forced conversion is illegal in India. But if you want our citizenship, we have, unlike the Jews, I think we have it sorted within our consciousness. Hindus do have a right to exist. The problem with Israel-Palestine is that Israel still suffers from that question. It continues to ask that question of its detractors. Do we have the right to exist? In India, we don't have an ideological problem like that. So, in my opinion, we really need to go for a rethink. We have been a land of Mandan Mishra, who has produced scholars like Vachaspati Mishra, scholars who wrote Bhamati and went back to Vedanta and all of that. And we have had, women scholars as well. Most of these issues that the West grapples with are sorted here. We need to really think about ourselves and move forward. On the foreign policy front, if we just look at Israel-Palestine, look at how India used to think a couple of years ago. We did not have a policy on Israel. We were very comfortable backing up the Palestine and maybe being dilly-dally about the Israel situation. Today we have hyphenated this pretty gracefully and said we will stand with Israel and we will stand with Palestine. So I think it's an interesting time to be in. I wouldn't be hopeless. and feel pessimistic about the situation.
No, it's not about being hopeless. I don't know why the energies feel very dull and dry. It's not about being hopeless. It's about being conscious and to say, all right, what do I need to fix as a country going forward? One is the individual perspective. The other part is the Desh perspective or the larger perspective. And let's bring that back into the narratives aspect. Why are we waiting for US to set the narrative? Why are we waiting for other nations to set the narrative, Gautamji? No, I am asking you also, why have we waited more than 7.5 decades to even get our borders right? To mark our borders and say, this is me and this is you. River goes there, it remains my land. River comes here, it remains my land. So is that so difficult for us to exert our own presence in the neighborhood? Ji.
No, I just want to come to that, the unity issue that has been raised by all three. I think we may be, what we see as unity is really uniformity. And Hindus, Sanatan Dharma cannot be uniform. There are 4 Vedas, there are 9 Darshans, there are 18 Mahapuran. I can go on. So, and each kind of God, who you follow, who your Kula Devata is, etc., is unique. So, I don't think we are looking at uniformity of the kind that we see in other religions, where there is one book, one God, one path, one way, including one democracy. But we are united by a consciousness which is much deeper. And to take that depth out of Sanatan Dharma and make it uniform, that these are the 10 tenets that you got to follow, or these are the 5 paths that you become a Hindu or a Sanatani, is not possible. I think the Sanatan Dharma is far more flexible. So what we are actually debating is uniformity, which will never happen in any Sanatan Dharma individual. He is a free being. He is unique. He carries the consciousness within him in his own way and expresses it through his own swabhav and swadharma.
Correct.
To box him into, for instance, politically, there is something called left and there is something called right. I can't believe, I don't know where I fit. These boxes are too small for me. I cannot fit into either of these boxes, and centrist and all kinds of divisions and make them into boxes, and you fit into one box and then you stay in that box. Is not how a Sanatan Dharma person is. So I think let's not try to get uniformity and see the inner unity. Now, the outer expression of that unity in terms of street power, in terms of standing for ourselves, may be missing. I think we are too busy with economic growth, unlike some others who are just interested in expanding or evangelizing their religions. So maybe that needs to get fixed in a political way rather than in a spiritual way. And I think we definitely should not try to emulate a fake unity, which is really uniformity, and stay in the domain of a united Sanatan Dharma, which is each person unique, and yet you and I are the same.
Two short points. One on her, and see, because I think we need to be clear. We cannot, in a basket, and I differ with her on that, say illegal or legal immigration will continue. They are two very separate categories, and we need to have different strategies on these categories. Because while it might be utopian that we can bring and convert, but last 1,000 years, we have had no example of that, where people who are living in Bangladesh and basically following the religion of Islam are converted. So it may be something, much easier solution is to ensure they don't come to India. बचपन में बोलते ना घड़े में 2 बूंद पानी भरो और नीचे से घड़ा तोड़ दो तो पानी सारा इकोनॉमी निकल जाएगा, and the poorest suffer the most on that. The other aspect, the challenge is, last 3 days has been an entire debate on H-1B visas and whether Indian immigrants should be allowed to come to US. Massive fight going on between Trump's so-called conservative base versus what they call the tech bros, which is Elon Musk and others, right? So that will also evolve as India keeps, we might very happily say CEO of this company is an Indian. But what is the effect of that on the American mind? Whether that leads to certain restrictions, whether that's an opportunity for India because Indians have to stay in India. What is the impact of that capital, of intellectual capital, because world changes very fast. As I always give the example, when I went to courts, if a client recorded what is being said in the court, that was contempt, he would go to jail. Today we have live streaming. So that change is also coming in US, and all of it may not be good in the short term, even under Trump presidency, like last 3 days have proved. and what will be the impact for India and how India grapples with it, especially in economic aspects, would be very important to see going ahead in the next year.
No, but if you talk about economic dependence, doesn't economic dependence also, or economic prosperity, depend on one, having a common civil code? Let's not say spiritual code. Could be a common civil code. We don't have it. Do we have labor laws and reforms which ensure that there is maximum productivity is maximized and not giving out doles? 3, are we as a nation, are we as a polity across the political spectrum clear on the fact that we are not going to dwell on subsidies? It's all just become all about revdies. Everybody is winning elections by giving freebies. Isko nahi diya to usko diya, uska vote mil gaya, jeet gaye. That's what's happened. So it's not a turnaround or anybody. It's the first mover advantage, whoever gets it. Maharashtra, Mahayuti did it, Ladli Bain, they won. Madhya Pradesh, Mahayuti did it, Ladli Bain, they won. Himachal Pradesh, Congress promised, Congress won. So, Jharkhand, this guy Hemant Soren promised, they won. So, at the end of the day, how are we defining ourselves as a country saying these are non-negotiable? I may be on this side of the political spectrum or on that side of the political spectrum, but in the interest of the country, we have not defined them in our laws. Directive principles said, oh, work towards a common civil code in the coming years. Those years are still coming.
So if you remember, the foreign minister was asked by a very astute observer, where is your national security strategy? And he waffled and dithered, but there is no national security strategy. I remember when I was working with Gautam, we got together a working group to come up with a national security strategy. This was almost 10 years back. And one of the greatest luminaries in our security sphere said, you know, we're an oral culture. The Vedas was passed down for 3,000 years orally. Is it really necessary to have a national security strategy?
My God.
Okay.
So that means we are not thinking as a country
only.
We're not
thinking, see, we don't.
As one entity, one unity.
We're so obsessed with the past, we can't move to the future. You look at the entire narrative of the Delhi election campaign, it's all about competitive freebies giving. Who is talking about making life easier for businesses to function? Who's talking about reducing regulations for businesses to function? Who's talking about industrialization and manufacturing? You know, one of the easiest ways, you have a severe malnourishment problem in India. If you don't believe me, just go to a construction site and see that average Jharkhandi, Bihari, Bengali working at that site. He is a good 1.5 feet, 2 feet shorter than you. Okay, and this will be for most people. Yet, you will have government statistics showing you that there is no malnutrition problem in this country, where it is so evident to the eye that you very clearly have a protein deficiency, a vitamin deficiency, and a fundamental mineral deficiency. Okay, we don't want to deal with that. We don't even want to acknowledge it because it offends our sense of Vishwaguru Bharat if you even acknowledge it. Who is looking at the micro? Who's looking at manufacturing and the complete abysmal working culture we have in this country? Who's looking, for example, at, the education system is so flawed. You've come up with a national education policy that's a cut and paste of NGO gobbledygook. Are you going to deal with the fact that spoken Hindi is a completely different language from written Hindi? In Tamil, it is even worse. You know, those of us who speak Tamil realize that written Tamil, formal Tamil, is a completely different, it's almost unintelligible to the person who speaks Tamil, right? And then they say you can't teach in English because it's, if you're growing up speaking Tamil or Hindi, the written form in both Tamil or Hindi is again a completely different language from what you grow up at home. So it is also equally unnatural, right? Who is looking at these things? Who is looking at, and you want to move towards problem solving. The first stage of industrialization does not require problem solving. It requires problem solving at the top 1%, which is your IITs and things which incidentally focus on learn by rote. They shouldn't be, but they focus on learn by rote. Everybody else should be rote because you want factory floor workers. But every mother who thinks her child has completed a BE engineering degree, who's not even fit to be a factory floor worker, if you remember the last reports, 98% of Indian engineers can't problem solve. Think that mera beta agla Bill Gates hai, Steve Jobs hai, or whatever. There is no dignity of labor in wanting to go work in a factory. These are the problems I want to see discussed. Nutrition, education, this thing. There is no informed water conservation, energy loss. $20 billion of your produced energy is lost every single year in energy theft. That is 5 French 1000 megawatt nuclear reactors to be built every single year.
Every single year. No, I know there are problems galore. My larger question is, we keep asking, we keep highlighting and saying, who is going to fix it? The other question is, how are we going to fix it? And what are we going to do to fix it? Now, if you're going to come back and say, no, fix the bureaucracy, all this will be fixed, that's not the answer. No, that cannot be the answer. Ishkaran was saying something. Yeah.
I was saying industrial policies, we are living in Delhi. The Prime Minister, leader of opposition for politics is in Delhi. Chief Justice is in Delhi. Cabinet Secretary is in Delhi. And we don't have clean breathing air. Half the year we have to stop construction and other activities. Diwali used to be a soft target. It's still a target, has no major effect on pollution. Data has shown it. So when we are still grappling with clean air in the national capital, forget, I remember in our childhood, all relatives from outside India would want to come to India because Delhi ki sardi bahut achhi sardi hoti thi. It was good time. Nobody wants to come. The effect on tourism, on economy in winters is just one business impact. But if we are till now not able to ensure clean air and clean water, then that's a humongous challenge we have to face.
No,
Let me answer that the previous question, which Abhijit also touched upon on sideways. Slightly theoretical. There's an idea called grand strategy, where you have a nation's goals, you figure out the resources, the means, and find out the ways to get there. Whenever I talk to anybody in government, they say they haven't heard of the concept or they're not interested in it. And I think grand strategy takes the internal, external into a cohesive whole. And let's say, to give you an example, Viksit Bharat, $20,000 per capita income by 2047 is a national goal. Can we have 10 such goals? For instance, technology, for instance, laws that encourage entrepreneurship. America had the military industrial complex. Can India have something equivalent, that instead of putting hurdles before entrepreneurs, you make it easy for them to grow, create jobs? And I think this unison, where the siloed way of functioning goes away. So you have, suppose you want, let us say, we need to have a big navy in the Indian Ocean region over the next 10 years. Okay, let's take that a small example. Now let us say a number.
It's a big example because our biggest borders are with the sea, and we have never thought about what if we are getting
it needs money.
It
needs money. Yeah, okay. Can that money come through economic growth? Answer is yes. Rhetorical question. Can private sector be embedded into that growth so that more jobs are created?
Absolutely.
Rhetorical question. This kind of interrelationships between defense, economy, politics, technology, I think this is where we need to go. What I feel is somewhere, and I've been giving a lot of thought to this and I haven't yet got the answer, and maybe this panel can help give it. We need 10 goals of the equivalent of $20,000 per capita income by 2047.
Okay.
Can we have 10 goals like this?
All right.
And then go work backwards, find out the resources that we have at our disposal, and work backwards to the means. How do you get there?
Okay, the question was, how do we do it? The question was, what is the direction that we should take? Now the first aspect is 10 goals that can allow us or help us work from 2025 onwards to that $20,000 per capita target by 2047. We're going to take a short break so that they can think and figure out those 10 goals and get it out of them when we come back. Stay with us. Looking back at 2024, looking ahead to 2025, it's the Bharat perspective. What do we need to do as a nation? And I've been asking this question, that do we as a people think about ourselves as Bharat and Bharatiya? Do we, in our actions, in our policies, in our moves as business people, as professionals, as entrepreneurs, as bureaucrats, as political leaders, think about ourselves, our party, our business? Or do we see what is in it for Bharat? This is a question that needs to be asked more often, And somewhere we all need to collectively set up those goals. So a D. Gukesh becoming world champion, Bharat winning the T20 World Cup, or the Pran Pratishtha at Ramlala Virajman, all of that are, yes, big ticks for us to be ready to host the biggest spiritual culmination, that is the Mahakumbh in 2025, right at the top of the year, is another thing to look forward to. But these are, yes, small victories. These are, perhaps they will add on, contribute, they will add to the flavor of a Bharat that is potent, a Bharat that is powerful, a Bharat that is there at the high table, has the seat at the high table as far as the world geopolitical conversation is concerned, and a Bharat that is ready to not just match up in stature to the Americas and the Chinas of the world, but actually do better as a collective. Can we do that? So, as we took the break, we said 10 goals that can be set. So, Gautam Chikarmane, you want to elaborate a little more, and before we take it across to the others.
So this whole idea of goal-based or grand strategy-based development, today India is in a crossfire of 3 grand strategies. The American grand strategy, the Chinese grand strategy, which to my mind is the strongest grand strategy as of today, and the Russian grand strategy. I can elaborate on each of them, but all 3 have a national goal. They are pursuing that goal for decades, and they will continue to do so. It's like a household. You want to get rich, you want some money, you want this much money, you start putting a systematic investment plan, you want to get there by retirement, so you need this much money, you keep working towards it over a 30-year or a 4-decade
you don't let go of
working
that
life.
side, yeah.
Likewise, those 10 national goals that I'm talking about, I'm not saying let them happen tomorrow, let them happen in 2047, to give a date, a random date. And each of those goals that we have, we need to move forward. I think the economic reforms that Dr. Manmohan Singh ji as finance minister under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao began in 1991 and have continued till now, are one aspect of that direction. That's the only singular direction that I see. Under this government, I am seeing a little more in the foreign policy space, where India is now getting heard. You must also realize that today we are a $4 trillion economy. If we are going to be 10 trillion by 2032, we cannot get there by just drifting. We need to know that this is where I want to go, and this is how I will go there, and these are the tools that at disposal, technology for instance, I need to have, and this is how, for instance, the Indian Ocean region that I talked about, Navy, industry, finance, regulation will all come together and deliver it to us. Unless we start thinking on these conceptual, philosophical ideas, their expression will be difficult. And I think those 10 goals is really a theoretical, a philosophical framework.
Why don't you start with goal number 1, and then we'll try and identify the 10 goals.
A middle power in semiconductors.
A middle power in semiconductors. So one of the goal setting is
by
middle power in
To me, the biggest challenge I find in economy only, why are our top 2, 3, 4 richest people in old age economy? Why are we not innovating something which the world copies? It's all about innovation, right? We have missed the industrial revolution, we missed the information revolution, we missed the knowledge. Why in AI or biomedical or maybe space, which is the sector where we lead the world in next 10 years, one industry which is of global significance, where we are innovators, not back-end people, where we lead the innovation, and there is a bona fide richest person in top 10 of the world, because you need to be there, who is from new age economy only, not from an economy which is dependent on the government, and not from an economy which is dependent on various political factors of India.
So new age economy leaders where Bharat sets the roadmap, or Bharat is the benchmark, and the others for the others to follow. So goal number 2. So 2 economic goal settings that have happened. Yes, Shubhrashtan.
I would want to see a national agricultural policy, a national refugee policy. These are 2 policies which I feel, if forget about implementation, if formulated properly, are going to really set the agenda. And when I talk about agriculture, I would want that the entire collective, Indian collective, in terms of political parties and other stakeholders, come to a consensus on land reforms in India, and most certainly how agricultural produce is marketed and consumed in India, which takes care of the nutrition aspect and definitely the market aspect. These are humongous goals, but we really need to get this sorted, because if we do not get the internal house sorted, then there's no point in even talking about being a Vishwaguru.
I have several.
Goal number 3. Yeah, please. So we list it out also, one by one. Yeah.
So, you know, the first thing is, there is one of those rich people who's actually thought things through, which is the procurement of key nitrogen technologies, both in terms of the production of nitrogen, which used to be a very carbon intensive process, and bringing it onto the roads. The final step in that technology, which is being invested now, is in putting it safely into a transport device, a car or a bus or whatever.
So that it doesn't become a moving bomb or an explosive
Exactly.
device.
And I believe that will be one of the big contributions that India makes, because let's not forget, bioethanol is extremely wasteful. It is not ecologically sustainable and things like that. I believe the national solar mission, this thing of going solar, will help. But my points are to do all these things work synergistically. If we have set a goal of 20,000 US dollars per capita, it can't be, I want a policy. You have to say, I want this specifically and work backward. So, number one, you need to have, let's work on reducing the urban footprint of Delhi by a factor of 10, of Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, Bangalore by a factor of 10, grow height rather than urban spread. You can give people 25% more land, still grow taller, improve your urban infrastructure by leaps and bounds, and most importantly, create the skilling required. You know, a 4-story building built with uneducated labor with bricks does not require skilling. With girders and glass, it requires certain skilling. If you make that glass solar to harvest maximum energy, you put central air conditioning everywhere and central water heating everywhere, it requires a certain automatic skilling. So it has, cascading effects everywhere. The second is you set the amount of protein, vitamins, and minerals that every child needs to have. You know, this entire egg in meal or no egg in meal is a complete distraction, because what you want is the protein. Don't focus on how you're delivering it, focus on what needs to be delivered. If it has to come in a protein powder or a protein pill. So soy leads to estrogenation, it's not good for kids. But there are whey protein, for example. You get whey from milk products. Your your milk program because of Korean is such a huge success. Why don't you use the whey from that in stuff like this? दूध से तो कोई protein मिलता नहीं है, whey से ही मिलेगा if you're a vegetarian and things like that. So work on it. We create more problems, we don't reduce problems. Third, come up with a language rationalization policy. Why is it so? You know, the great difference between English and German is German still has the thou and the thee, sie und SESZ, etc., etc. In English, we got rid of thee and thou. Everything is tu. Ye aap, tu, this respectful, and you know that gets mentally when the language.
Everything is you.
Exactly. And you get rid of the hierarchy also mentally then, when you get rid of the aap and things. Come up with a standard language rationalization policy that makes the difference between the spoken and the written close to zero. Expand the vocabulary of those languages so that kids can learn in their own this thing. And everybody now has tablets. That you remember under the Congress there was this mission to get a 3,000 rupee tablet. I don't know what happened to that. You have best teachers in each languages that will explain things to kids in a simple way. Make that your education policy.
So why don't we use generative AI to teach? It can
Why
be,
not?
It's
Why
the
not?
easiest way. It's the easiest way to
So-
take high quality education, which is standardized in a particular way, to the masses and to people. And where, I may not say that you have to rationalize language, but I would say to narrow the gap between the spoken and the written. That is something which is
And come up with a secondary education
we're already
system.
seeing this. We're already seeing this in Netflix. I think we have films from across the world, not only India, and people from different cultures are watching those films and enjoying them. Pushpa, for instance, is just the latest
Or
example.
Korean serials in India.
North Korean, South Korean,
South Korean serials. So the the dubbing, the translation, all of that, we can use generative AI. Even an English lecture given on science in English can be automatically, AI can be used to translate that into Assamese, into Odia, into this place from a world famous researcher or scientist.
I
want to provoke you a little bit more.
They can't be Steve Jobs.
They can't be Steve Jobs.
They have to agree that to be an industrial worker.
You're getting very specific into very tiny policies. I think what we need is a grander vision. For instance, are we the regional power of Asia? Now, how do we work backwards in that? So we need collaborations. We need Indian Ocean region. We need our northern borders
why I
secured.
avoid all of that,
And then
sir?
you come back one by one into those. The policies will follow from a vision. And I think
disagree.
The,
I disagree.
The 10,
Because I've
the 10
seen-
parts
I've
that we are
seen the
talking about
bureaucracy up
is
close.
more of a that this is where we want to go, and we'll figure out
No,
as
no.
technology changes.
No,
There is
because
a
the
point that you
bureaucracy
make,
in
but
India
yeah.
does not accept that. If you give them generic vision, they will give you generic plans. You need to be very, very specific, because every time you bring it down to the tactical level, they'll say, sir, I'm thinking in 60-year timelines. You know, you Westerners, you look at 15, 20-year timelines. We are a 5,000-year-old civilization. I'm not thinking of now.
No, sir,
I've literally
let me
heard
tell
all
you the
of
hurdle.
this.
She mentioned
You
that we
need to
need
get into
agricultural
specifics.
reforms, right? I think the farm laws were there for you.
They were there.
They're excellent reforms. They are much needed reforms. They should be back. But we have lost a full generation before those reforms will come.
No,
back.
but
we
See,
will
it
not, we
was
will not
one
see those
state
numbers.
protesting, Gautam. It was,
And I
you threw the entire farmer community of this country under the truck because of one state protesting, and you did not have the guts to enforce law and order in a
That's what I'm saying.
state
So I
which you
think
were
law
never
and
going to be able to
law
win.
and order, street power needs to go, and
The state
power
will not
under
be
law.
balanced.
Let me ask, put this around in another way and try and take this. So we've looked at 8, 9, 10 goals. One, we got to fix education. Two, we need to have a long-term policy vision. If you want to be a regional power, what do we need to do? Of course, we need to seal our borders. We need to get a uniform communication. But overall, I think the larger part is all of us need to think as Bharat. We need to think of ourselves as entities or citizens of one country, not based on one particular region, one particular constituency, one particular political party, or one particular ideology or belief system. So that's one part, and from there everything flows. But here is what I am trying to ask you. If a 370 could have been executed, if a Ram Mandir judgment could have been managed, why were the farm laws not managed? Why was the CAA, NRC allowed to flow? It was one road in Delhi that was blocked, but it became an international sensation. So I am asking you, is there a deep state in our country which is actually saying we can't afford to progress so fast? We need to be slow because there are deep states across the other world which are influencing us and telling us, okay, we have to always be a feeder. We cannot be the main consumer, or we cannot be the generator. We have to be a feeder supplier to the other hegemonies.
Anand, more than deep state, I believe we have a permanent bureaucracy which has its own goals and own aims, whose so many kids are studying outside India who need to be settled there. That's how foreign influence comes, and that's across many fields. Not in that sense, politicians are still the best because you have to go for elections and the blood keeps churning. The permanent bureaucracy, I think, I'll give you one example. A client came to me. It's the most ridiculous thing I've saw. A huge project. He does it. He gets all building bylaws permission. He makes it. After he makes it, fire department doesn't give a permission, saying your staircases aren't wide enough. Now, why can't building and fire department have one plan so that when you satisfy it, you get both the permissions at the same time? Because obviously the fire department wants something. And it's a new building, 1 lakh square feet. Just these small hassles, and this is only bureaucratic.
These are roadblocks, but I'll
these
tell
are-
you, the
these are-
bureaucracy
no,
of
these
our
are huge
country,
roadblocks. No, but you
but the
could change your
bureaucracy of our
staircase.
country also helped implement Har Ghar Nal Har Ghar Jal. It also helped implement
Then
some
there
of
is a
those, some of the most ambitious Ujjwala Yojana came via the bureaucracy. It was a bureaucracy that worked tirelessly to ensure that, the oxygen cylinders were built under PM care during COVID. Whatever work had to reach. So I'm just saying, there will be good and bad of both to paint the whole bureaucracy. पूरे फसाद की जड़ bureaucracy है या problem की जड़ bureaucracy is also somewhere, I don't know if it is true.
But it is a big bottleneck in my mind, and where the Prime Minister or Chief Minister is particularly focusing on a project. Of course, there are good bureaucrats who he appoints to those posts and they do a good job. But overall, is it more a hindrance in today's India? I believe there needs to be massive reforms
You
there.
believe Pareto principle exists there. 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people and 20% of the...
So you are talking about flagship projects directly being supervised. Of course, they will go through very fast because they are excellent bureaucrats. But what about all those not flagship projects? What is happening there? That is a...
So that's right. So you're
let
trying
me translate this into a national goal. Zero tolerance for corruption, immediate sacking, end of story. No more dragging of cases,
What
nothing.
about obstruction?
Zero
I have
tolerance.
seen
obstruction.
bureaucrats
They may not be
who are
corrupt, but they will obstruct.
who are not corrupt, who are obstructionist, and they think this is a great virtue.
So they need
And
to
they
give
are
it in
and they are
writing.
celebrated by the media as honest
They'll
Lionheart
give you
or
a
whatever.
full, a 4-page, 5-page document saying why a building like that cannot exist because broader, narrower staircases and all of that.
Even though it's
The
sanctioned by the
bureaucracy
building
is
department.
too smart to obstruct and falls short of even basic common sense when it comes to implementation. I don't want to get into the bureaucracy conversation because it's a long drawn conversation. All of us, none of us are bureaucrats and we will have a bias there. The point that I have been trying to make is that ideologically we really need a reshift.
Correct.
Because I come from Bihar, and Bihar is a test case of how ideology really entrenches you. Ever since Karpuri Thakur, we have not had one leader that has brought in a policy that talks about business with confidence. With this government in power at the center, at least we started having a conversation with India Inc. But post farm laws, it just went completely silent. I don't think anybody today has the guts to host a company CEOs and talk about their problems. I'm not saying people are not doing it. Foundations are doing it. Individual silos are doing it. But can the government today come out, sit with the CEOs and say, I will address all these problems. Here are the people who are going to get policies.
You want money, but you are not actually creating wealth. And when you try and help those who want to create wealth, then you get badgered. There is a political badgering that happens, which is the suit boot allegation and crony capitalism allegation comes, and then you tend to back off. That's also a never-ending cycle of electoral policies and all that. So that one nation, one election also comes into as a goal.
There's a very easy solution to this, with the bureaucracy. It's very simple. Ask a customs official every year to come for refresher training, identify what has gone through, see what their general service attitude is, and if they fail to identify within 5 minutes, you dock their seniority. For every joint secretary, additional secretary level, what you do is you come up with the ways and means of every policy you recommend, and what are the failure standards. If it fails, your promotion gets
I tell you what,
there are very
I think we need to also listen to the it's the final 2 minutes. I got to wind up after this.
How about India being a global knowledge hub? We have the physical infrastructure. We lack, which is tightly controlled by the left. Can we de-leftify our universities? Can we we cannot become a Silicon Valley overnight. It will take a quarter century. Can we aspire to be there in technology, in STEM, in the sciences? Can India, with all its huge infrastructure and humongous spending on teachers and faculty, be a world leader?
For that, we need to have a risk-taking ability, 2, clear away the red tape, and 3, actually celebrate those who are creating wealth in our country. We are not celebrating those who are creating wealth. We are actually picking up stones and trying to pelt stones at them.
To answer your segue question, sorry Ishkan, in one word, it wasn't the bureaucracy that stopped those laws. It was the inferiority complex our own leaders feel from the Western media. Ability, our need for validation.
See, that also comes from the fact that we always need for validation. We should have need for validation only from our own people. We should not be looking outside. Now, can we bring that attitude up in 2025 and going forward? Big question.
Very interesting point is what is our relationship with wealth creation and how do we look at it? Our attitude. Because what she said is very correct. You can have an Elon Musk openly supporting Trump and a Mark Cuban openly supporting Kamala Harris. Can a businessman in India do it? If he does it, what will be the risk to it? You saw what is happening in Hyderabad and so many rumors floating why it is happening to Alu Arjun, right? So that problem, and does a common Indian think good wealth creation, or he's still governed by that socialist mindset propagated through movies where the Nehru family could be very rich, celebrating a birthday in a airplane, but an Indian making money was looked at with distrust or as if he's trying to rob other people. So that attitude we all have to ask ourselves.
No, it's not the attitude. Those are narratives that were set and that were embedded. So we've got to dispel that, and we've got to work collectively to try and more actively do it. And somewhere would like to see some more gumption and some more spine of the courage of conviction from the powers that be. If their intent is that it's the larger goal for Bharat and we'll push through it no matter what, we're not going to buckle under pressure. And if you've got to learn to counter narratives, figure it out, do it, and get your narratives in place. Okay, I've got to wind up so quickly. One thing you're going to do in 2025. You yourself. One thing, quickly.
I'm going to go to Canada and rile up a lot of people.
I'm going to look forward to that. Shubhrashta.
two goals actually. One, to actually see that I passed my motherhood phase, terrible twos phase in a decent way. And the second is, I think I would really want to appeal to the corporate India in more than one ways to form a political constituency of their own, because that's the only way in which you get your work done in this country. If you're not, I'm not asking them to get on the roads like Shaheen Bagh, but do have a political might that nobody can mess around with.
Yeah, and with the larger intent of trying to create wealth for the country. That's what you're doing. Yeah.
Personally, only do things and put my energies into things I enjoy doing. Cut out all that I don't enjoy doing.
Don't enjoy doing. So fill yourself with more positivity. Yeah.
Maybe by the middle of the next year, I'll give you the 10 goals that we just discussed.
More importantly, collectively, I wish that all of us and in our own way help Bharat build this grand strategy, Bharat's grand strategy for 2025. And that's where I think all of us need to work. Personally, I want to get my black belt by the end of this year. That's what I want to do.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm going to be pushing 50 very soon, but before that I want to get it. My daughter can get it at 8. I think I can get it at 48. Anyway, thank you very, very much. Happy New Year to all of you once again. Thank you.
Thank you.